How do you make your day a masterpiece?
Instead of feeling like you're a million little pieces all over the place. We're going to share 10 tips for making every day a masterpiece.
Ooh.
Mama says namaste. Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh, yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.
All right. As we are going into the 5th week in June, I had all of the marriage things laid out, and what are we going to do for this week?
Oh, no.
So I have a whole Evernote list with kind of where I dump any ideas where I'm like, ooh, that would make a good podcast episode. Or somebody asks a question in Unschooling Families, or sends me an email, or we discuss something in 48 Days Equals, and it prompts an idea for something to cover on the podcast. And so I went through my whole list of podcast ideas and links to different things we could talk about, and just pulled one that I thought might be interesting. And I basically read through the list until Nathan went, ooh. And then I said, oh, let's do that one.
There you go. You're fishing in the right pond.
Exactly. So what are we talking about today, Nathan?
I have no idea. I'm just kidding. We're talking about turning every day into a masterpiece.
That's right. And we're going to share 10 tips.
Be careful.
So I got these 10 tips from an email that I got from Deb and Gino. Now, Deb is the founder of strengthleader.com. She has great information and insights for leading with your strengths. And it's very DISC focused, which are DISC personality assessments, which I've talked about a lot on this podcast and in my Mama Says Namaste coaching, simply as a tool for self-awareness, not an end-all be-all, but an amazing tool for self-awareness. And beyond that, awareness of others and communication and connection.
Well, isn't that the thing about self-awareness?
I guess so.
End up, it's not about you. It's just about what you can do for others.
Oh, man. Yeah. So anyway, she does a lot in the professional arena with this. And she speaks with a lot of, or she's one of the head John Maxwell coaches. And so she does a lot with John Maxwell training and leadership. And so she sends out an email. And this email was 10 tips for making every day a masterpiece. And like has happened so many times, I immediately saw all of this application in leadership, and I saw how it could apply to families and how this can be powerful for parents as they're figuring out routines and navigating overwhelm with young children, and how it can even be helpful for our kids in learning time management and how to be an effective adult. These are the life skills tools I want to teach our kids. So as we go through this list, we're going to kind of break it down into how we can apply this in our personal lives to have a bigger impact and be able to kind of keep our sanity and enjoy this masterpiece we're living in.
That's right, because it's all piles of a mess if you don't scrape it up into a masterpiece.
Right. We'll just be lots of little pieces.
I love the analogy.
Don't you? All right. I'm proud of that one. Okay. So number 1, first tip is start the night before.
No procrastinating anymore?
No. I mean, how often do we wake up in reaction mode of, okay, what do I have to do today? Oh, crap, I've got that meeting in 10 minutes.
Never us.
Okay, I've completely been guilty of that. And so we have found that a great way of eliminating some of that chaos in the morning is planning the night before. We call it dummy proofing our day.
Yeah,
or bookending our day.
Bookending our day so that we kind of know, okay, this is kind of what we're going to do in the evening, and this is our intention, and in the mornings, this is what we're going to do. And that way you have a roadmap already kind of written out. You know, I learned about this when I was a very, very busy person, and we're all very, very busy people. But, you know, when I was doing real estate and running around all over the place.
When you were a reactively busy person versus an intentionally full life person. There you go.
And so if you don't like something, you have to change it. And one of the things that you can do is just create an environment where, well, man, I would want to go to bed and be excited about the next day if I did it that way. And if I woke up this morning, I'd be excited about the day if it looked like this. And so you just try to create as much of an environment for that to occur as possible. And it takes everybody being on board, communicating what you want and kind of trying some stuff out and seeing what works and what doesn't, and playing with some levers and seeing what falls into place.
And recognizing it can be seasonal. I mean, I remember when we first started this, we were we would joke.
We were just babies.
We were just babies. And we would, like many of those young 20-somethings, joke about drinking coffee out of an IV. We always had to have our coffee fix. So we would prep the night before by fixing the coffee maker, having it all ready. And then we started going old school, and we're like, oh, we really like doing a stovetop espresso. And so then we slowed our morning a little bit, but it required prep because we wanted to, get the little espresso maker ready. And so we prepped that for the night before. And then now, we slow it down even more.
Yep.
And we have our teapot, and it's just filling water in the tea kettle. It's not like there's lots of prep for this morning thing, but the anticipation of the morning calm of getting the tea kettle brewing, and then letting the tea steep, and then sitting and drinking while we read.
You love the ceremony of it all.
It is.
So you create ceremony in your life.
It does. It creates some ceremony, which when ceremony so often adds, what's the word I'm looking for? It adds a level of reverence. That's what I'm looking for. It adds reverence and appreciation to something. And I mean, what if we add some ceremony in our morning time and add something that is just a joy spark that you do in the morning? I loved my cappuccino. I love my cup of tea now. And I like having the morning start with a joy spark of something that's cozy and warm and fuzzy, and I love it. And so adding that and being prepared for that. I already know the night before what book I'm going to read and what tea I'm going to drink. Mm-hmm. And I've got that ready. That really helps, as well as taking a quick glance at our calendar and anticipating what do we have coming up down the pipeline, so that we talk the night before about, hey, reminder, I've got this. Now, I'm saying reminder of this because once a week, we're going over our full schedule for the week. We're assessing, especially as we travel. We are really working with lots of moving parts.
Come on, Mom.
We've got moving parts all over the place with different schedules. And I know that, for us, it may be that our schedule is our whole family moving cohesively every few days, and that's a lot. For other families, it may be you all dealing with the schedules of your work and your extracurricular activities, and there's all these moving parts. Yeah. So it's very valuable once a week, at least, to do a check-in and say, okay, this is what our upcoming week's going to look like, and this is who needs to be where, when, and how.
But all this does is it helps kind of eliminate the frazzle opportunities to occur in the daily activity. And so if you wake up every morning, you don't know what you're wanting, and you haven't communicated that, then if somebody does something that agitates you, there can be absolutely no reason for it. It's just frustrating because it's not what you thought you wanted, and you don't even know what you think you want. Mm-hmm. And so when you start to put down some concrete, parameters around, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to try to do the mornings and the evenings, just to try to see if we get a different energy and see if we like it. It's amazing what comes out of it, just exploring those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. But for number 2, it's very important so that you have enough energy to communicate all these thoughts and feelings that you have gotten enough rest. And this is one that we typically drop to the back burner and say, I'll sleep when I die. I've got these children that I need to raise and experience, and this lovely job, and this house I've got to pay for, and I don't have time to rest and sleep. I really have to get going. But man, that's just a losing battle when you start thinking like that.
Right. And I know that, there is an element of people that it's like you run yourself ragged all week long, and then you're like, I'm going to make it up on the weekend.
Yes, of course you will.
I can go ahead and let you know for
Oh,
any
hold on,
of
we
you.
got a barbecue this weekend.
Exactly. And for any of you brand new parents or parents that are expecting or anything like that, just a news flash for you, no matter how much you want to sleep in, your toddlers, your young children, they probably will not. So unless you're expecting them to babysit themselves or you actually have called in the babysitter, sleeping in on the weekends probably is not going to be happening.
Most people get how many hours of sleep a night when you're a parent? What do you say, 2?
It's probably more of a reality, unfortunately. Yes, and I say this as a word of caution so many times for new parents. It is not a beautiful badge of honor to be at your infant's every beck and call, because what happens is that you become an actual danger to yourself and to your family when you are sleep deprived. And you have got to consider that this is the same as driving under the influence.
I know. I read a book about sleep deprivation and what happens in like that third shift between I think it's like midnight and 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the window that's like the worst, where you just make the stupidest mistakes because your brain just kind of goes on autopilot during that window. And so you can think you know what you're doing, and then the next thing you know, you're just like, zooming through town going 90 miles an hour, and you don't realize it. And so you can do that as a parent too, and it can be really, really dangerous.
I mean, I remember forgetting a child in the car. That's the worst of the worst.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. I mean, I felt absolutely awful, and it sure is not as a point of, negligence, intentional negligence, or any desire to do that. And it was obviously not for a long time. It was a very short amount, but it was me at the height of sleep deprivation with 3 small children, and one of them thankfully not demanding my time because they were beautifully sleeping in the car.
Yeah.
And I forgot.
What?
And those things can happen. And again, thankfully it was in the shade and everything was fine and everything was wonderful, but those scary scenarios happen even to the parents with the best of intentions. And I sure if there is one thing that I can do for my own self-care that will greatly benefit my children as well, it's taking care of myself, and that means sleep for sure. So prioritizing sleep and figuring out how to make that work. Yes, there will be times you're going to be sleep deprived. And the reality is there are times that it's just going to happen when you have small children. We recognize not everybody is going to be able to have the babysitter or the other person that can step in and give you a break.
Yeah. I mean, by the time we had our third child in the hospital, we were sending that third child to the nursery as much as we could so that us two could get as much sleep as we possibly could during that opportunity.
Because we knew that we needed to have it because we weren't going to get the support back later.
Yeah. And so it was so important. Those bonding moments, where the baby's like right there, like, get that child out of here. I got to get a solid 6. No, we bonded. But there was we acted very different on the third than we did the first.
For sure. Right. So just recognize that, start the night before with preparing for what the next day is going to look like, and then give yourself a good night's sleep. Make sure that you do prioritize that as a part of your health and well-being and making that happen. And if you don't get a good night's sleep, allow yourself grace to recover. We just dealt with this. We just came from Florida to California. We drove all the way across the country. We've navigated every time zone. That right now, apparently we're in the line.
I don't want to know.
We're in the line because
Are we again?
I'm literally in the RV. We're talking less than 250 square feet, and my time will change when I walk from one side to the other. We're like right in the middle. And
I wondered what's going on. I'm like, why am I so hungry?
And we're in Arizona, which doesn't do daylight savings. So, our time's all over the map.
Is it actually Tuesday?
So with that, though, we have paid attention to our bodies, not the time, because we recognize that the time is fluctuating. And so for us, we're dealing with utter exhaustion at 7. Well, that's really 10:30 or 11 on the other side of the country. And that's what our bodies have been used to. And so in order for us to be able to handle the time zone changes, we added in naps when we could. We went to bed early. We got up early and decided to just enjoy the day when everybody else was asleep. We looked for ways to restore our body outside of the time clock and just looked for any opportunities for rest and restoration that we could. And that's what we're going to say for this is get your rest. And when you don't get your rest, look for opportunities to recuperate that. I mean, naps are not a bad thing, and sometimes even a 10-minute nap can be a great recharge.
Oh, it's wonderful. I've started doing it a lot lately.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even, you maxed out parents and you've got preschoolers at home that absolutely love a show. Put the show on for that 30 minutes or that 20 minutes. Lie down and rest your eyes and just see if that gives you enough of a recharge that you're going to end up being a better parent because of it. Okay. Off my soapbox on sleep. Number 3.
Which is so ironic.
Which is so ironic. Rise early, or at least earlier. I know that's hard to do. It is.
If there's one thing that you have been consistent with, it's you don't like waking up in the morning.
No, not at all. You're so right.
But it's a curse that I have, where it's the first thing I do very early is I wake up.
First thing you do very early. It is the first thing you do is wake up. That's crazy how that works.
It's nuts. And Ashley used to really kind of it just demoralized me and beat me up over how early of a riser I was, and how
I would demoralize and beat you up.
Yeah, emotionally, it was really hard for me when we were first dating.
This is awful.
No, I'm just.
How
there were a couple of times. It was, you wanted me to stay out till like midnight, and I was like, oh, whew, I don't know, that's a lot.
Oh, and I'd say you can sleep when you die.
It only happens once a year. It's New Year's Eve, and everybody's doing it. Well, if everybody climbed off of a cliff, would you do that too? Yeah, New Year's Eve. But sorry, long story. But I've always been a very early riser, and it's a very great way to take control of the day, because you are suddenly in the driver's seat, where I feel like when you're doing it the other way around, you kind of wake up reactively. By the time you get that, you have to stay up late to like sweep everything up under the rug before you go to sleep and get it all done and feel accomplished. And I guess that's okay, but you still kind of, you wash and repeat versus like, I'm ready. When I wake up in the morning, I'm ready to go. I've got all my, my morning ahead of me. And a lot of times, like this morning, I did a 10-mile bike ride. I made everybody, or half the people, breakfast that were up. I came back. I was, cleaned up. All right, it's lunchtime. It's like, Nathan, sit down. It's 8:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And I've been up since 5 and been running around and got all this stuff, did all this stuff, and half my day was lived, and I still have another full. I got the whole day in front of me.
Well, and I have to catch myself sometimes when I see Nathan just chilling and relaxing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 3 p.m. Why are you just sitting around? And I have to remember, because he's lived 2 days before 10 o'clock already. And so,
Don't get mad at me.
So I wish I could completely argue that night owls can do the same sort of thing. However, I've been a night owl. I've been a lark. And I have to admit that it's hard to make it all flow as a night owl. I mean, I remember for me, it's like, yeah, I get my momentum, and then I need to try to wind myself down and go to bed.
Right.
Which is hard to do.
But you're thinking about you can't sleep and it's late and you better get to sleep.
Right, and so then I end up with a vicious cycle, and then it ends up even worse. And so I found, through Nathan's encouragement, obviously, and peer pressure, that being that going ahead and waking up early allows for so much. And so I just, in an effort to be with my honey, I would wake up with him, and it slowly shifted my approach to where now, even though I still am going to wake up later than Nathan.
Always. I don't think maybe once or twice you've woken up before.
But I mean, the latest I would sleep in now is about 7:30. Yeah, I think 7:30. I think I've made it that late before. Time zone changes sometimes.
Okay, I'll give you a time zone.
Yeah. So we definitely have shifted to more of a morning approach, and what we have found is, oh my gosh, we accomplished so much. You want to know the best time to go visit all the parks? Not that I'm sharing this with you, but
don't do it.
I know. Oh my goodness. We explored Yellowstone and had the place to ourselves. It was so magical. And then we saw why everybody talks about it being crowded, because by 9:30, when we were literally leaving Yellowstone, because we had gotten there at 5:30 that morning,
Yeah.
everybody was coming and it was so crowded you couldn't see anything, or you know, it was a whole different experience. And so, you know, the early bird catches the worm. The early bird gets the views. The early bird doesn't deal with all the traffic. There's so many fun things.
And the early bird gets a lot.
Oh, early bird does. So think about, what could you accomplish if you got out of bed even 30 minutes earlier? What could you do? What could you do if you added just that 30 minutes before you have children awake to just simply have time to yourself? What would that do? And
Or
how
with
would
each
that
other.
set a masterpiece? Yeah. Getting up early and having some time with each other. And we've been talking a lot about your most intimate relationship, and it's not just nighttime. You can have times for connection, and
up all
in the
in that
morning
morning
hours
breath.
are beautiful.
That's right. But, to this next, I'm going to jump to the next one if that's all right.
Oh yeah.
Having a plan, it's really hard to just serendipitously remember all these things that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard. The day is just like a tiger that just runs through, and either you got it or you're telling it what to do. I mean, either you got it by the tail or you're telling that tiger what to do. And making a plan that you work for the day is really helpful. I remember I was really against this when I learned how to do this in real estate, and was time blocked. And I had somebody watch me and wrote down everything that I accomplished every 10 minutes for a full day.
That's got to be so unnerving. I bet it was a very productive day for you.
I was totally real with like how I spent the day. I tried my very best to be like, I will work for pride to show that I would right now, but normally I would leave, and I would leave because I wanted to get a real taste for it. And it was shocking how much time you waste. It's kind of like the Marie Kondo, when you pull out all your electronics, you're like, oh my God, did a Circuit City have a baby in my closet? and so
Circuit City, you just aged yourself.
I totally aged myself. I'm good looking too. But it's if you don't have a plan for it, then it can be really overwhelming, and you don't catch the things that you think, you don't get as much accomplished as you think you do.
Right. Yeah, you want to work your plan for the day. When we started the night before, what we're looking at is kind of what are the big things that are happening the next day. If you've listened to the Stephen Covey, even if you search Stephen Covey Big Rocks, I'll put a link to it in the blog post that goes along with this as well. But it's just a really good description and analogy of the big rocks versus the little rocks. And when you talk about your big rocks of the day, you just think about this analogy of, there are all of these little to-dos, tasks, things that we just react and respond to in life that are all the pieces of sand. And so if you were to take a jar and you fill it with sand, how many big rocks can you fit in? Versus take all of those little things out, you put in the big rocks, those things that are your top priorities, and then you fill all the crevices with sand. And that's essentially this little video analogy that Stephen Covey does, that shares prioritizing your big rocks allows your big rocks to happen. And when you don't prioritize them, they oftentimes can be moved out of the way, or not enough space for them because of all of the sand, all of those little reactive things that happen in your life.
And that's when things get exciting and we're at our best, is when we're reactive.
Right. So number 4 and number 5, we're going to kind of put together. It's working your plan for the day and then prioritizing. So it's looking at, what are those big rocks? What can you do, and what are the most important tasks that you can do while the day is young? And do those before you have the distractions of the day, because the curveballs will happen. And so the more big rocks you can accomplish the earlier in the day, the less likely you're going to have those be a variable that gets lost later on.
So what do I do if all of my big rocks are buried in the chaos of the day?
What do you mean?
Well, like, I remember there were times where, there would be a hidden big rock in my day that I didn't know was going to happen, that was there in the chaos that I didn't have time to deal with, that comes up.
Okay, like a hidden big rock of all of a sudden now our child has, I don't know, popped her arm out of socket and I'm rushing to the ER.
That's a great example.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you've got a big rock, which is definitely a priority, and things get derailed. That's the reality of life. And that's where grace happens.
Well, the other thing is you can
sometimes
also
those things
book in time for chaos. That's the other thing I was going to say is
Oh yeah,
I
you're
used
so
to
right.
just make time for, all right, this is, all the crazy stuff. It can come at me at this time. I'm eating dinner here, so I get to wait an hour, but
Right. Well, I think there's two parts to it. Number one is what you said. The more you can prioritize the big rocks, the more you can create space for the chaos, and so that you can add the crazy in. Sometimes, though, a big rock, like a child getting injured, is going to change everything, because then you do have to switch your priorities, and you can't say, I'm having dinner now. You're going to prioritize it.
come on.
And so for things like that, that's where you give yourself grace. If every day you are stepping up and you're saying, these are my big rocks of the day, and this is how I'm going to accomplish it, and this is how I prioritize it, then those variables of those random times where a child gets sick, or you get ill, or there's an accident that happens, or some sort of term of chaos happens in your life, you're able to pivot because your big rock bank account is full.
But can't I just chip away at my big rocks throughout the day, little by little?
If you've
Little
scheduled for that
multitasking.
and you can make it go. However, what you just said, that next step
Segue.
is focus. In order to make sure that they do happen, you don't want to multitask. And I have been so guilty of this, because at one point I would try to do all of my work for 48 days, which is my dad's company, helping people find or create the work that they love. And so as I am sitting and focusing on 48 days, I also have my Mama Says Namaste emails up, and I'm responding to things on that. And of course, for both of these, there's some social media engagement. So I've got Facebook up, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm responding to comments on Facebook. But wait a second, I just got a notification, and that was a friend, and now I got to go comment on that one. And then,
check
oh
it
my
out.
gosh, and then I saw that video, and then I got carried away with that.
And
And then I go back.
Sundress.
Right, and then I actually had to go back because I got an email from 48 days. And then I'm going to pop over to Mama Says Namaste. And what happened is I had a whole day of activity without much productivity.
Assumed productivity.
Right. And so oftentimes with multitasking, what can happen is you can have the air of productivity, or you can have the air of you can think you have productivity when all you have is activity.
Well,
It's just movement around. It's bustling around, and there can be a lot of bustling and moving. And I kind of think about it being, the busy housekeeper that is, pick up something and put it down, and move something over and put it down, and put up something and put it down, and just moving things up and down is not really helping you.
Not
Yes, you're
cleaning
moving, but you're not really getting the stuff accomplished.
But it feels so much lighter and freer to just do it your own little way and spread it all around. But when you realize, when I had myself measured, and every 10 minutes, you stop to text, and that takes away 10 minutes. Then you realize what you thought was an hour of work is now 50 minutes. Well, you do that 3 times, now you're down to 40 minutes, right?
Right.
30 minutes of work. And so,
And it's scientifically proven, it takes time for your brain to get back on track. So every time you're derailed with something different, a distraction, then you're going to go back to, then it's going to be harder to come back to what it is you're doing.
Which
So
it sounds-
multitasking, bouncing to different things, it's hard to get back into it.
in the effort to do more with less, you're actually burning yourself out trying to keep all these balls up in the air and switch
Right.
it back and forth, which will limit you and require you to do our next step, which is to rejuvenate and to take some time to rejuvenate and refresh yourself. I remember as a parent, as a new employee, you will push yourself to the edge and then a little bit further than that. And then you'll be asked to go a little bit further just when you think you can lay down. And, there's a time for that and there's a season for that. But one of the things that I really appreciated and started to practice was taking intentional time for myself in whatever that rejuvenation can look like. And that's unique. It might be running in the park. It may be just sitting on a park bench. It may be taking a nap. It may be going to a spa. It may be having a great talk with a friend and calling up and laughing. Anything that just refreshes you and kind of brings your essence back into your spirit. Gives you that energy to tackle the world again. Those are the things that I'm always looking forward to rejuvenate with.
Yeah, for me right now, I can be really guilty of sitting and working solid, not taking any break. And Nathan's really challenged me on that. I've recognized that in doing that, not only do I get so lost in work and kind of takes me a little minute to adjust, to transition to something else, but I physically was impacted by that. I really dealt with major back issues and just issues with just sitting for so long. And so I had to figure out, okay, how can I break things up a bit? And I hate to leave things in the middle of something. So first off, I got rid of multitasking. And so first off, if I'm working on Mama Says Namaste, the only thing up is Mama Says Namaste. Anything that would be a distraction, anything that I know I could bunny trail and get lost into reading something or something like that, I'm either going to close it out or I open in a new browser and hide it.
Yeah,
and
make
so
some space for it.
I'll keep things open and pending and other things, but what's in front of me is literally the things that I need to work on. And then, let's say I'm doing Mama Says Namaste. I'm going to work on emails. I'm going to respond to emails. Now, before I jump into commenting on social media posts, or before I jump into podcasting, I'm going to stop and take a break because I've done one thing. So I've got my chunk, and then I'm going to take a break and give myself a little reward. Sometimes that reward is just checking in with the family. Oftentimes for me, I've pushed my reward being and also a goal in another area of my life, and that's on the physical side. If I am going to be sitting, in my situation, a lot of times sitting slouched over in the bed as my makeshift desk in our little RV, I need to stretch my body in different ways. And so I take a break and I do 25 push-ups. After I do those push-ups and I'm about to hit the floor and collapse, I go into downward dog. And that downward dog stretch, that's my biggest recharge moment right there. That is I push, I'm proud of my accomplishment. It fits my style. It's something that I feel like I've checked 2 things off by the time I've gotten to that little reward of that stretch. Because I've done a block of something with my work. I've done a block of something physical, and now I'm going to stretch. And I will stay in that stretch, and I will rest my back, and I will close my eyes and roll my head and start to pay attention to my body and stretch my body. And that little spark gives me the stamina to then move forward to the next task that I have to do. And that one little thing has been really powerful.
You make it sound too easy. Mine was floating in a tank of salt water for an hour.
Well, and that one is great. I mean, and I think there's benefit for both. Look at those big recharges, something where you're not going to float in a tank for an hour every single day or every hour. That may be something that you're doing once a week, once a month, something like that. But doing a few push-ups, doing stretches,
totally.
Things like that are completely feasible to do multiple times throughout the day. So look for big rejuvenators and look for something little that you don't have an excuse to get out of. I can't excuse my way out of one downward dog. That one stretch can take me 30 seconds, but that 30 seconds can give me a huge boost. So I can't justify or excuse my way out of it, which makes it more likely that I'm just going to make it happen and knock it out.
Isn't it funny how things that give us such a wonderful feeling we have to force ourselves to do?
It's
a
so
strange
frustrating.
thing because we're such like food, like an Oreo cookie. I'll do anything for an Oreo cookie, but to go run, which feels even better, I have to convince myself and make myself go do it. And it's not until I'm even halfway down the road and I'm grumpily all right, then I'm like, oh, this is all right. This is I can do this. And then I feel good. And then it's just funny.
Well, there's something so enriching about the elements of fulfillment that require some effort on our part. And I think that that's a lot of what has to do with it. And that's another podcast right there, is just the beauty of growth and that success journey, or the hero's journey, and talking about what the hero's journey is. And it's in those struggles that helps to make the victory so sweet. And so, me just going straight to downward dog isn't going to have the same level of gratification as it does for me when I do 25 push-ups ahead of time. Then it's so sweet, and I love it.
Well, it's not. It kind of leads into our next point. I mean, it's not just doing a downward dog. It's doing a downward dog.
Right.
It's engaging in that downward dog on purpose, mentally and physically, and you combine those two.
Right. Number 8 is be prepared and stay engaged. And so it's talking about be here, be now, be present, do your homework, come prepared, show up fully. And so that is for anything that you are doing. So when you're going to, when you're working on work, be fully present with it. When you're working with your kids and you're being there with your kids, be present with your kids.
What, I can't look at my phone and play with my kid at the same time?
That's not being present. That's multitasking, which means you also could be
What about time?
jack of all
Just
trades,
spending time
master
with
of
him.
none.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, and so with that, yeah, I mean, I wrote a blog post a long, long time ago called Working from Home is So Overrated, because when you work outside of the home, it's a given that you're going to have childcare. Like you're going to have somebody caring for your kids. But when you work in the home, it's kind of assumed that you cover the childcare and the work. And so you're taking on 2 different jobs, not to mention household manager and all the other things that happen in a household that are a full-time job in and of itself. And so it can be really difficult to work from home when you're playing both the role of parent, provider, and in the professional arena. And so I am a huge advocate for keeping those separate. When your kids are younger, look for somebody that can give the demands to, like, give the attention to a toddler and an infant's demands. We're at a point now where we are in the golden years with our children where they are old enough that now when I work, a lot of times they work with me and they're learning alongside of me. And it's a beautiful thing where I can have them involved in the process. But that was a long time in coming. And there were many years where my ability to show up better as a mom was because we got a babysitter, a nanny, a family member, other people to help with our kids, to let me fully focus on the work that I needed to do so that I could put it down and fully focus on the children and be present for them.
Well, it gets back to the, you can't multitask. And, life throws multitask at you. It requires you to multitask. And so the more you can recognize, okay, I can be a better mom if I get all my work done, I don't feel pulled here, and I can be completely focused within this bracket of time. If you have the ability to do that, it is life-changing, I think.
And it took me a while to do that because what would happen is a kid would come in and ask me a question, and I'm sitting on my computer, and I would feel like if I tell them no, then I'm telling them they're second fiddle to the computer.
Right.
I feel guilty. And so the way that you counteract that is by saying yes with intention and full focus at other times. So when I fill that bank account of family investment by being fully present, showing up, playing with my kids, talking with my kids with no distractions, and really being set on them, then I've earned the right to say, hey, at this time, I need to get work done so that I can fully focus on you later on. So right now, you need to go to daddy, or you need to go to the babysitter, you need to go somewhere else to get your needs met. And I will be fully here for you at a later date, and you can follow through with that. And so I was able to alleviate my guilt with drawing a boundary around my work so that I could get things done only after I had intentionally fulfilled it. So that's how you add that.
And kids like to compartmentalize things. And so that was, it's pretty easy. Like, this is work time, and then this is play time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can balance those. But,
so 9 with that is minimizing distractions. And so that is staying focused on what it is that you have to do. I got very strategic in my planning because I wanted to be able to have something left to give my family. And so when I would work in the mornings and I would get all of this stuff knocked out, I had to be able to minimize the distractions so that I could accomplish those big rocks, so that then I could put it aside and then be there for my family. And so the more that we can eliminate distraction, the more we are going to be able to do it. A lot of times, distractions are the technology.
No.
And so thinking about how you minimize distractions. And I will say the same for parents as we say for dealing with kids. We talk to parents all the time who are like, I screens have taken over our home and I can't get my kids back. And I'm like, you can. You are the parent. You are the adult. You are the one paying the bills. You can.
So I just want you to think of it this way. Like there was a point in our life where we didn't have phones to cruise through and distract us for 10, 15, 20 minutes while we waited in line. We didn't have those things. And so if you think about a phone or technology as like a smoke break. It's reasonable to stop and take a smoke break, 10, 15 minutes, but then you start to realize how addicted you are if it's every hour, if it's every 30 minutes. If you have to take those tech breaks to get your fix and to see who's doing what and what's going on, it really calls into question what's going on in your life that you're really enjoying. I mean, I had a great discussion with this guy because both of our phones couldn't work in this oil change place, and we both we didn't talk at first because everybody just had their nose in their phones because that's the standard deal.
Right. So look at how to minimize it. And the way we minimize distraction when it comes to our technology is two things. Number one, not making it convenient to access it. So when I'm doing my work, oftentimes my phone is in another room so that I am not tempted to look at it and see what other distractions there are. And I've got my notifications set so that they don't pull me away from what I'm doing. Another way is making your day so full you can't fit it in. With our kids, we do this all the time. Instead of it being no TV today, it's, hey, we're going to go on a hike and we're going to go do this and let's go do this. And we're out and about and the kids haven't thought about TV because there's not a downtime for us to even make TV fit in. So sometimes it's not about saying no, it's just saying yes to so many other great things that you don't have time for the things that are simply a distraction that aren't feeding you well.
And that's just building new habits.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to really help build new habits is number 10, evaluate your day. At the end of the day, especially as if you're a couple and you're trying to make some changes in your family, it's really important just to do a download at the end of the day. It's like, here's what I saw. Here's what's going on. I felt this kind of energy when we did this. I felt like they were distracted when we did this. Maybe we can try it a little differently. But it's that kind of red light, green light that we don't always do. We just kind of will be sometimes unintentional or just say something in passing and see what comes out of it. But we don't, sometimes we avoid those really important discussions.
Right. We talk about this when it comes to, we have a podcast episode that's called When Adventures Run Awry. And we talk about how whenever things go wrong, the last thing in our deal, we do assign, assess, act, and appreciate. And appreciate is us looking back. What went well? What could we have done differently? And what have we learned in the process? And what do we appreciate?
Yeah, what just fell into our laps that we weren't even expecting.
Right. And when we address our days like that, what went well? What didn't? What can we learn from that? What does it make possible? It really can shift our approach and help us to reframe what habits we want to continue to add. And that creates intentionality in your life, and it creates the ability to really be intentional with your flow and find the rhythm that works for you. And that rhythm will change. I mean, we're seasonal people. We go through all kinds of seasons because transitions will happen. For all of us as parents, we're going through every transition with our children of coming from, baby to toddler to child to teenager to adult. And all of those
just
transitions.
When you think you got them figured out, it all moves to the next. And,
right.
And that's the game, is you're always going to be hustling for the present, hustling for the moment. And the more that you can kind of hash out how things are changing and what maybe worked yesterday doesn't work today through that evaluation process, and it keeps it fresh and it keeps you creative. And what if we tried this tomorrow? Or maybe we'll do this with the. I remember when we were struggling with in the early stages of parenting and punishment. How do you punish? And how do you is it timeout? Is it what do you do? And what the way we worked through it, and we changed and evolved was through evaluating. Well, this I just felt like I was, brick wall here, and this felt like a breakthrough for whatever reason.
So when it comes to creating a masterpiece in your life, I love one of my mom's sayings that she says for all of her art that she does is she talks about how to make your mess into a masterpiece. And our lives are messy. There are days that it does not go as planned. And there are times we don't get it. We get so frustrated. We lose track of what we want. And in that messiness, we still have the ability to make it into a masterpiece. So again, our 10 tips. Start the night before. Get your rest. Rise early. Work your plan for the day. Prioritize. Focus. Rejuvenate. Be prepared and stay engaged. Minimize distraction. And evaluate your day. Give grace for the fact that when things stop working, it doesn't mean you have failed. It means it's a new opportunity for change. There's a transition that's happening. So what have you learned from the past that's going to help move you forward? And then embrace that. And when you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it. People love to feel needed. And it's a beautiful thing when we can connect with each other and support and encourage one another. And it's amazing what that can do for our own motivation and growth. So go through these 10 tips and look at what you have going on in your life that's really creating a masterpiece versus just being a reactive mess. And remember, the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.
1, 2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change.